Good evening. For the longest time, the Bush White House frowned on any real discussion of global warming. The president only really recently started mentioning it in speeches, having previously said the science behind the theory was incomplete. Today, at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, the U.S. Supreme Court issued its own opinion of global warming, and it's historic. The majority on the court used unusually strong language, saying the risk of catastrophic harm, though remote, is nevertheless real to coastal states in this country. The court went on to order the federal government to look again at regulating emissions from cars. We begin at the court tonight with our justice correspondent, Pete Williams. Pete, good evening.
Brian, good evening to you. This is one of the most important environmental rulings in decades, and it puts new pressure on the Bush administration to do something that has so far refused to do: regulate greenhouse gas emissions from new cars to help limit global warming. Today's decision is a huge victory for environmental groups in a dozen states, including Massachusetts, which warned it was losing coastline to a rising ocean level caused by melting glaciers as the world slowly gets warmer. The court said the Bush administration was wrong to claim that it had no legal authority to limit carbon dioxide and other gases released from new cars that act like the ceiling of a greenhouse, trapping in heat.
We have ended the administration's denial of reality and defiance of the law.
In unusually strong language, the court embraced the warnings of scientists who say U.S. car emissions contribute to greenhouse gases, leading to global warming. It ruled 5-4 that federal law does give the government authority to limit emissions from new cars, an action the court said would slow the pace of global emissions no matter what happens elsewhere in the world. The decision doesn't force the Environmental Protection Agency to impose those regulations. Opponents of new limits say the EPA could still claim they would be too expensive or might make other kinds of pollution worse.
We may have years into the future before a finding today that carbon dioxide is a pollutant actually results in a regulation.
But environmental groups say today's decision makes it very hard for the government to refuse.
The only thing that the agency could do would be basically to stand science on its head and argue in the face of all the facts that somehow global warming emissions do not contribute to climate change.
Some Democrats in Congress doubt the Bush administration will act and say the ruling makes it more important for Congress to set greenhouse gas limits for new cars. And surprisingly, a group representing U.S. and foreign car makers tonight actually calls for the federal government to set greenhouse gas limits instead of letting the states come up with a patchwork of different laws, Brian.
Pete Williams at the Supreme Court tonight. Thanks. And to that point, one major piece of fallout from this Supreme Court opinion could be that it does push the federal government to catch up, in effect, with some individual states where the environment is concerned. A lot of states have been way out ahead on this issue, California perhaps chief among them. That report tonight from NBC's John Larson.
In a state where there are more hybrid vehicles on the road than almost all other states combined, two of Governor Schwarzenegger's famous Hummers now run on alternative fuels. The legislature here is considering 60 pieces of global warming legislation. Everything from biofuel school buses to energy-efficient TVs and computer monitors to green apartment buildings like these.
We hope to have 1 million solar roofs over the next 10 years.
We simply must do everything that we can in our power to slow down global warming before it is too late.
Since the governor signed landmark legislation last year to cut greenhouse gases by 25% by the year 2020, California has taken the lead. In Anaheim today, the world's largest conference on alternative fuels and vehicles.
We've had 100 years of driving around on petroleum fuel and flipping a light switch powered mostly by coal and other fossil fuels. So it's a matter of changing our thinking and being more informed consumers.
Schools like Monterey Ridge in San Diego now feature lights which turn off automatically when rooms empty, and a new solar farm which this morning was generating almost 90% of the school's energy needs.
It's very cool, and it's been great life lessons for the kids.
Even public opinion polls here, which usually list crime as the top concern, now reflect that for many, greenhouse gases are the #1 bad guy.
Record low snowfall and record drought have residents here facing a perfect storm this year of drought and fire conditions. Obvious reasons why the political climate surrounding warming is warming as well. John Larson, NBC News, San Diego.